Listen up, fellow Democrats. Fight fake news and lies with facts. Save our democracy from right-wing hypocrisy. Keep our integrity, embrace our diversity. Whenever we're down, we always come back. So listen up, Democrats.
Hello, welcome to Progressive Oregon, a weekly engagement broadcast on progressive issues in Oregon. My name is Larry Taylor, and today I have with me my co-host, Betsy Cunningham. If you would like to ask questions during the show, go to the Uphill Media YouTube channel and type them into the chat window, and Betsy will relay them to us. This will be our last show of 2018, so welcome. What our topic today is a teachable moment based on a reorganization that recently happened in Oregon. We're going to talk about the role of a chair in the deliberative assembly, partiality in a county reorganization and what that looks like. We're going to talk about the effect of what that has on the people who attended. And then we're going to talk about what can be done in situations like this. And then we'll go through upcoming events, just so you know how to engage in democracy in Oregon. So our teachable topic moment topics today are what Robert's Rule says about the impartiality of chairs, what happened in the recent reorganization, why this is detrimental to the Democratic Party, and what can be done about it. So I've cited a couple of state laws that govern how the parties are supposed to operate. So Oregon Statute 248-05 says each political party by rule shall ensure the widest and fairest representation of party members in the party organization and activities. Rules shall be adopted by procedures that assure a fair and open participation of all interested party members. So that's up at the beginning, sort of lays out the framework for what follows. So what happened in a recent county reorg was that a county chair showed up at the reorg with a flyer that was handed out, and it was his slate. It was branded. It was paid for by his political action committee, apparently, and handed out before the meeting. And then he proceeded to conduct the reorganization. When the first was up was the chair, and so he stepped down and turned over the podium to someone else, who then ran the election of chair, and then he resumed the podium for the balance of the meeting. And for all intents and purposes, that's a perfectly fine thing to do. We're going to talk about a Robert's Rules that says that's an okay thing. But the transgressions, and this is what people seem to miss, were number one, the chair distributed a slate of officers and delegates which compromised his impartiality in the election. And the second thing was that the chair presided over the election of officers other than himself and delegates after he showed his partiality. And then the third thing that happened, which we're not going to talk a lot about, but it was just bizarre. The chair allowed each candidate to be asked, will you follow what the DPLC wants? Which is sort of a broad and open-ended question, like what are they getting at? Is this really what the chair wants, so that the chair has turned his own vote in the State Central Committee into 9 votes? Is something going to be done with people who vote against the chair's will? Robert's Rules does say that an assembly can direct their delegates to vote in certain ways, but that's on a case-by-case basis. It's not a blanket statement that they have to take orders from somebody. So really, it would be interesting to know what he's getting at, because I think we know. The result of the election was that 100% of the officers and SCC delegates that were on the slate were elected. So slam win, he swept the table, got all of his people elected. So on the next slide, we have the front and back of the flyer that was handed out. This is not a Xerox that was run off that morning. It was it's a folded brochure, and so the front is on the right, and it's got a picture of the chair, and it's his campaign piece. Nothing wrong with that. On the other side, they talk about their shared victories, where they claim a bunch of stuff that they did forward and what his vision is for the future. Perfectly fine. But then we get to the second page, and this is where he lists our candidates, whatever that means. Is this his candidates, or is there a group of people that voted for these or nominated them? So on the left side are his chosen candidates for vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. And then on the right are his preferred delegates for the state central committee delegates, and then for the 4th congressional district delegates. You'll see that most of the names are the same in both. And these were the people who ended up getting elected. And then, of course, at the bottom, it very clearly says, paid for by friends of Chris Wig, blah, blah, blah. So everyone knows where the chair stands on this. The next slide, I've added some definitions because we get a lot of English that are batted around. And so the first term is impartial, means not partial or biased, treating or affected all equally. So then you dig down into what partial means. It means inclined to favor one party more than another, or biased. And the term biased means exhibiting or characterized by bias. And bias means an inclination of temperament, especially a personal or sometimes unreasoned judgment or prejudice, and an instance of such prejudice. The other term that gets bandied about is corruption. So it is dishonest or illegal behavior, especially by powerful people, such as government officials or police officers. And the final term is dishonest, which is characterized by a lack of truth, honesty, or trustworthiness. And I think the key one there is actually the trustworthiness. Now we'll go into what Robert's Rules says about impartiality. So the Robert's Rules is organized, starting in the earlier chapters with the concepts behind parliamentary procedure, and then as it progresses through the book, it gets down into more of the details. So this is up near the front, under Conduct of Business in a Deliberative Assembly. Customs of formality that are followed by the presiding officer and members under parliamentary procedure serve to maintain the chair's necessary position of impartiality and help to preserve an object and impersonal approach, especially when serious divisions of opinions arise. There's a distinction made later about where there seems to be points in time where the chair needs to be impartial and times when they can be partial. I think this is more of a blanket statement where the chair really needs to be impartial at all times. The role model of this was George Washington. If you read about how he conducted himself during the deliberations over the Constitution, he was completely impartial and would remove himself from the room whenever it looked like his influence was going to affect the discussion. The next one is on page 394, lines 28 through the next page through line 2. And it says, but the impartiality required of the chair in assembly precludes his exercising these rights. And the rights that we're talking about are participation in debate. While he is presiding, normally, especially in a large body, he should have nothing to say on the merits of the pending questions. On certain occasions, which should be extremely rare, the presiding officer may believe that a critical factor relating to such a question has been overlooked and that his obligation as a member to call attention to the point outweighs his duty to preside at that time. To participate in debate, he must relinquish the chair, and in such case, he should turn the chair over. And then the next slide, the presiding officer who relinquished the chair then should not return to it until the pending main question has been disposed of, since he has shown himself to be a partisan as far as that particular matter is concerned. Indeed, unless a presiding officer is extremely sparing in leaving the chair and taking a part in debate, he may destroy a member's confidence in the impartiality of his approach to presiding. So in this case, he's shown partiality through the entire election, and so he really should have stepped aside while someone else conducted the election itself. And then the final role, and this is where people can look through Robert's Rules and find certain parts to to support their argument. Whenever a motion is made that refers only to the presiding officer in the capacity not shared in common with other members, he should turn the chair over to the vice president or appropriate temporary occupant during the assembly's consideration of the motion, just as he would in cases where he wished to take part in the debate. The chair, however, should not hesitate to put the question on a motion to elect officers or appoint delegates, even if he is included. So this assumes that the chair's behavior has been impartial. When we did the reorganization in Clatsop County, I presided over the entire reorganization, but I never breathed a word of partiality to any of the candidates, and I did no handouts. I ran the reorganization, straight up from beginning to end, and there weren't a lot of contested races, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But that's not the case as this was conducted in Lane County. So the next slide, can the preside chair over elections, which includes himself? So if the chair is partial, no, they can't preside. If the chair is impartial, yes, they can preside.
So, Larry.
So, yeah.
Can I just throw something in here?
Yeah.
So I want to go back to, because we're talking about the chair and impartiality, and something that Gene Atkins said in a Facebook discussion about this was, well, it just seems like the progressive movement didn't do their job. They could have had a list of endorsees and put out their slate and, done the same kind of proactive effort. I wanted to go back to this slide because, yeah, that was, bypassing the concept of the chair and partiality. It was, why didn't we just do what we wanted to do? I want to read what you were trying to read at the bottom here, because it says, paid for by friends of Chris Wigg, suggested candidates not endorsed by the Democratic Party of Lane County. Who are the friends of Chris Wigg? And if Chris Wigg were being an impartial chair, and I'm asking this as a question, shouldn't he have said, whoa, everybody, I don't know where this came from, but this looks like my name is being attached to something that I can't have it attached to as the chair, right?
Right.
Okay, just
and your earlier point was spot on, because some of the people in the Facebook comments were saying, well, I was secretary and I lobbied and campaigned for myself. You absolutely can't. You're not the chair, and there's no requirement that you be impartial.
Right. The chair is a different role. Imagine if a judge walked in and said, look, everybody, I know you need to listen to the jury, but I think he's guilty. Now, carry on. That's pretty much what's going on here. All right, carry on, Larry. Thank you.
So I want to go through some of the Facebook comments, because there were people that attended the meeting and they were talking about what went on. And then really this gets to the core of one of my concerns, is that people leaving the Democratic Party because of behavior within the party. So the first quote is, I left after the first vote seeing how things were being run, right? They saw what was going on, saw that this was, not democratically run. So they just left. And so many people leave the party because they just can't deal with this stuff. And what does that leave us with? This leaves us with all the people who think this kind of behavior is just fine. Next one, there are reasons I'm not in that party anymore. Next one, when we moved to Oregon, I re-registered Dem after exiting, except for the fact that I'm waiting to see what will happen towards 2020. I am already removed. Disgusting. Next one, so glad I'm not a Dem. Next page of quotes. I just can't wrap my head around so many intelligent people not being able to see that they belong to a corrupt organization, and that their membership is not only permission and support, but complicit. And the next one, it makes exponentially more sense to leave the party between elections, forcing them to be less than viable, than negotiating for those that insist on maintaining a Democratic Party at all, which I am not, for actual platforms that are implemented by people who actually want to implement them. Again, it is so sad to see people leaving the party, because we need them to stay and fight to clean this up.
Well, in defense of everybody who made these quotes, I'm with them.
Indeed.
I mean, I'm here, but I'm here right now with you, because I'm not sure what else to do yet. So I'm going to sit here and try to figure it out. But I find it really difficult to see how we're going to affect change. It's depressing, Larry. You got to at least understand that, validate their feelings there.
I totally get their feelings. Yeah. I'm just arguing that I wish you would not leave, because you leave this mess for the rest of us to deal with. And we got to have one party that represents the people, right? And a total complete waste of time would be trying to do that through the Republican Party. And so what does that leave us with, right? Next page. This type of leadership that serves top down with little care for consent or process or actual democratic interaction is so mindless and terrifying. Next quote, I'm sure the local Green and Republican parties are already thanking him on this one. And then I think the final one in this set is, I went up to Chris Wigg just before the meeting began and expressed how upset I was that he presented a slate without checking with people, as there were others who wanted to run for office. He just said he couldn't talk about it just then because he had a meeting to run. Yes.
That would make me furious, because that's just a complete dismissal of the democratic process by Chris Wigg right there.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put my 2 cents in here. I think that what happened before the meeting was much more problematic than what happened at the meeting itself. And the fact that the election was not clearly run with a set of parameters that said, you know, people can pick their slates, and kind of, you know, helping inform people who may not be as familiar with what may be appropriate or may not be appropriate. That's where the chair had a responsibility, I think, that he didn't fulfill in this mess.
Yes, totally agree. He could have easily had this sent out by someone else without being branded with his name on it. There's nothing wrong with people organizing and supporting a slate of candidates. That's perfectly fine to do. It's just when the chair does it that it's a little bit different. Not a little bit different, big difference. Just a second while my slides sync. So yeah, I'm hoping that that the good people of Lane County don't completely abandon the Lane County Democrats, and that someone is interested in getting in there and cleaning up this. So then we have quotes of the chair. And so first of all, I wanted to recite another piece of the Oregon state law, which is about the role of the chair in, excuse me, the role of the counties versus the role of the state, because we had the chair of the Democratic Party in on this Facebook discussion. So in Oregon Statute 248.31, the precinct committee persons of the county shall constitute the county central committee of their party. The county central committee of each major political party is the highest party authority in the county party matters, and may adopt rules or resolutions for any matter of party government which within the county which is not controlled by the laws of the state. And then there's a parallel statement about the Democratic Party of Oregon being the primary ruling entity in state matters. But the delegates from the counties are the ones that elect the party officers. And so really they're there to serve the parties. It's not like we serve the Democratic Party of Oregon, which is the conception that some people walk around with. They are there to serve us, the delegates of the State Central Committee and the counties. And so why the chair would be weighing in on a county matter is really interesting. So the first quote from the DPO chair, Chris did not preside over his own election, but did preside over elections involving people that he endorsed through his slate card. My understanding is that the bylaws were followed, but the group is certainly free to make different rules if they believe this is not appropriate. This is the biggest problem that we have, is that people do not understand parliamentary procedure and have not spent any time with this book so they understand the underlying concepts. You can follow, the bylaws are just the intermediary governing set of rules. The state law is the overarching set of rules, and the underlying set of rules is parliamentary authority, which is where I got all the quotes about the impartiality of the chair. So, so her understanding that the bylaws were followed, you know, big whoop, parliamentary procedure itself, which is the core foundational procedures of our democracy, were not. So, you know, everyone needs to understand that distinction. It would be great if people who are in roles like this would spend some time either with the National Association of Parliamentarians, of which there are 3 groups within the area, of the Portland metro area where they can study this stuff, or they can go online and find groups to join to study it. But don't pick and choose your interpretations of what you think parliamentary procedure is. The worst part is that someone like the chair of the DPO starts quoting this stuff, and then people think, well, that person must know what they're talking about because they're the chair, when in fact they don't, and they're spreading more confusion, which makes it very difficult to conduct a meeting under parliamentary procedure, because you end up fighting over these fundamental principles because there's not a common understanding of what they are.
Which is a great example of why the chair has to be impartial, because they carry weight, and they could say stuff like the moon is made of cheese, and you'd have some people go, well, the chair said it.
And look at our president. We've got 40% of the population who thinks that he's just just a godsend because he's speaking the truth, and when he's just lying to them right and left.
Right. So just for fact, right, the current chair really didn't have a lot of prior experience in the DPO, certainly didn't have any experience with parliamentary procedure. And when she gets a ruling, she goes to a parliamentary expert, right, and asks a question.
Right.
Okay. Just for everybody's clarity.
And she's more than welcome to join any of the groups. It would be great if she would. I'm finding that by talking to people who are not immersed in the politics of the Democratic Party of Oregon, to be very clarifying, because I bring up these situations to them and I ask them for advice, and they look at me like I'm speaking Klingon because they can't believe this stuff is going on. Is there any comments from the line, Betsy? Clearly not. So quote number 2. So she says, it's not clear that the rules are violated here, or that the principles of the impartiality of the chair that apply to debate are the same as those that govern fair elections, and we never know whether a polite request to recuse himself from chairing the election involving candidates he endorsed might have solved the problem. So yes, it is clear that the rules were violated. They were parliamentary rules, and that there is no distinction when you are chairing an organization between what you do in debate and what you do in elections. You have your reputation that follows you around, and you need a reputation of being an impartial leader if you're going to effectively lead an organization like this. And then quote number 3, which gets back to our definitions. I think that the terms like abuse of power and corruption are way too easily thrown around and become meaningless when applied to every action of an officer when they are acting within the rules. Again, the officer was not acting within the rules. And so if you want the public to stop calling the Democratic Party corrupt, then work to stop corruption, not defend it. So just so everyone understands what's going on in the background and why the chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon would be defending the practices of the Lane County chair. So the Lane County chair was one of the most ardent supporters of the DPO chair in the 2017 election for the chair of the Democratic Party. He hosted house parties and recruited votes. And he was rewarded with an appointment as the DPO Rules Committee vice chair after she was elected. And then earlier this year, he became Rules Committee chair after the previous chair resigned. So, I think that pretty much clarifies that there's a relationship going on in the background. And that's why the chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon would be involving herself in the politics of a county, because otherwise she has no business in them. The significance of Lane County. Lane County is in the central part of the state, the west central part of the state. And what this chart shows is the number of delegates from each of the counties that comprise the elected delegates in the state central committee. So of course, number 1 county is Multnomah because they've got the most Democrats and they have 20. The next one is Washington County, which has 11. The third largest group is Lane County, which has 9 delegates. And as I said before, if you have 9 votes that have all pledged allegiance to the chair and follow his direction, the chair then ends up with 9 votes when he goes into one of these meetings, out of a total of 169, which, is percentage-wise is a lot of clout. It's not like there's 10,000 people voting and he's controlling 9. And then you can see that most counties have 3 and 2 delegates. And the significance of the Lane County vote was that the DPO chair won her election in 2017 by 17 votes. That means that 9 people voted for her as opposed to her opponent, which, and of course, was me. She won without ever having attended a state central committee meeting or involvement in the matters of the Democratic Party of Oregon or demonstrating an understanding of parliamentary procedure. So right there, if Chris had swung 9 votes, he handed the election to her.
And just real quick, everybody could go watch Larry's 4.5-minute video on the 109 PCPs that were installed on one day, which was the Multnomah play. We keep getting outplayed here, progressives, just outplayed.
So options for Lane County and the State Central Committee. Number 1, if the state law was violated, you should redo the election. There were 290 elected PCPs, and presumably there's been some appointed since then. If any of them were not notified by mail 10 days prior to the reorganization, the election is not valid. And this is both quoted in Oregon statute and in Robert's Rules of Order. I read through the Lane County bylaws, and there is no provision for email notification that I could find. And so Oregon statute says that mail notification is required, and you can do it by email if the bylaws allow it, but the bylaws don't allow it. So state law requires that all 290 people were notified by mail at least 10 days in advance. Again, the majority of elected PCPs did not attend that meeting, which is very curious because it actually takes effort to run for one of these offices. And so 170 people did not go to the reorganization. The second option, even if someone didn't want to pursue that, which I think is the strongest argument, I don't know if they were notified by mail or not. But if that argument didn't hold, you can still move to redo the election. And at the next meeting under new business, any Lane County Precinct Committee person can rise and state the following: I move to suspend the rules and redo the Lane County reorganization election in a special meeting chaired by a chair pro tem elected as the first order of business, and that the special meeting be held within 45 days following state law regarding the mailing of prior notice to the entire membership. This would require 2/3 vote and previous notice, or a vote of the majority of the entire membership, which would be around 145 people, 150 people. So that's how you would do it if you want to make a motion from the floor. Again, the majority of the Lane County Democrats is the deciding and governing body of Lane County. It is not the chair. The chair is supposed to be someone who conduits the will of the group, not directs the will of the group. And then the third option, what you find in most county bylaws, is a provision for recall. You can recall the chair. By a vote of 2/3 of the PCPs in any meeting of the Central Committee, any party officer may be recalled for cause or including but not limited to gross misconduct. And that was just one of the things listed. And whether or not you consider this gross misconduct, the chair can still be recalled. Written notice of the reasons for the recall shall be mailed to PCPs at least 30 days prior to the meeting in which the recall is voted upon. And at the next Central Committee meeting following the death, resignation, or recall of a party officer, House District Chair or Vice Chair, or any state or fourth congressional district delegate, candidates to fill such vacancy shall be nominated. And then at the next meeting, the Central Committee shall fill the vacancy from the list of candidates nominated. So if you wanted to follow that path, you could, and that's the process for following it. Recalls are very awkward because they are just even more contentious, but you have to decide what you want to do. We had the opportunity to recall the prior chair to the Democratic Party for just egregious behavior towards one of the members of the admin staff. And we made the decision that it was more disruptive to recall them than to just write it out. So that's a call that you need to make. The other option is for the State Central Committee. So what could happen at the next State Central Committee meeting is that the Lane County delegation is not credentialed because of the way the election was not fair. So any State Central Committee member could contest the credentialing of the Lane County delegation at the next meeting, which is coincidentally the reorganization meeting where the next chair is going to be elected. After the credentials report has been given, any State Central Committee delegate may move to amend the credentials report by removing the Lane County delegation. And it would just take a majority vote of the State Central Committee to decide whether to approve or defeat the amendment. Again, there's this huge distaste for anything that looks like discord or contentiousness, and so the success of this is not assured, and we would have to go through a not pretty debate over how this election was conducted and how these 9 people were selected, which there's probably a majority that would find it distasteful, and so this would not be a very successful path. But that is an option that we could go through. So there you go, Lane County. It's up to you. Betsy, any comments from the line?
No question.
Any comments, John, in wrapping this up?
Well, I saw just a couple mentions from O.G. Johnson and maybe some other people asking, what they could do individually. But I mean, I guess my question would be, would you be willing to, or how could people, it seems like there's a lot that needs to be done. There needs to be an organization of PCPs within counties if they want to make change. And, what should people do?
Well, to do the things that I talked about in Lane County, you'd have to be either a elected or appointed precinct committee person. You have to have standing within the committee in order to make those kinds of motions. If you're just a Democrat within Lane County and you want to clean up the party and you don't want to become an appointed PCP, then you should find your representative. Lane County is one of the counties where many of the precinct committee slots are filled. You need to find your representative and tell them what's going on and tell them to work to clean this up. These people are representing you within the Democratic Party, and that is their role. If you are outside of, if you're in a county anywhere in the United States and you see this kind of stuff going on, you should get in there and try to make change. By either recalling the chair or overturning the elections or whatever you need to do to clean this stuff up. The options that I laid out there are the ones that were the most obvious to me. If you are not a Democrat, then you really don't have a dog in the race. So there's not a lot you could do.
I just add that you probably should go to the chair as well, because even though the chair is elected by the PCPs, the chair represents all Dems in Lane County.
Yes, if you think you can make headway with the chair, I would certainly encourage you to express your opinion and tell him that this kind of behavior is not okay.
Well, you get enough people to do it, they have to pay attention.
Indeed, but I've found that you can talk all you want, just like we did here in Clatsop County. People testified against LNG. Hours and hours of testimony and time was wasted, and the testimony was completely ignored, even though it was overwhelmingly in opposition to LNG. And it wasn't until we found candidates to run against them and took a majority out of the Clatsop County Commission did we actually make any progress. And so that it makes people uncomfortable because sometimes democracy is messy, but that is what you have to do. Democracy is not a spectator sport.
So true. Great information, Larry. Thank you for covering all this.
So go Lane County. And if anyone wants to talk to me about the procedures and motions and stuff, you're more than welcome to give me a call. Probably the easiest way to get me is larry@appealmedia.org.
Okay, so you'd be willing to help people with any of that stuff?
Absolutely.
That's good. I think one of the key factors here is we need to get a group of people and organize. You know, trying to do this as a single individual, you know, is difficult. You need to get 3-4 people together, sit down, make a plan. You know, I don't think Chris Wigg operated on his own, right? He's got to have help. There's other people, right? His minions or whatever he's bringing in. The biggest problem the progressive movement has right now is working together for a common cause. We've got a whole bunch of supposed progressives in Oregon, but none of them talk to each other. Let's work together. Larry, is there anything else you want to cover before we do the out?
Just wanted to review upcoming events.
Great.
So the Multnomah County, which is, as we saw, the one with the 20 delegates to the State Central Committee and is the 400-pound gorilla, they finally picked a date for their reorganization, and it is tentatively scheduled for January 13th, which is now less than a month away. So if you want to run for any of the positions, I would contact them and find out what the process is for getting yourself nominated and on the ballot. You can always nominate yourself from the floor, but it's always better to be actually printed on the ballot so people can see your name and you have more viability as a candidate. And then we should all be looking for progressive candidates to run in elections. As we've seen from the DPO analysis of who occupies local offices in Oregon, and these are offices at the county level and below, 2/3 of the state is held, the positions are held by Republicans. So only 1/3 of the local offices in the state are run by Democrats, and that is an equation that we need to change. It's just because the Republicans have a longer history of running for this stuff. So you should all be out, you should be looking at the positions that are coming up in the May election, and you should be forming groups to go search for candidates and run. You know, the critical one is the school boards. We have just unfortunate fights over healthcare inside the schools where conservatives don't want our kids to get healthcare because they're afraid they're going to learn about birth control or something. That kind of ludicrous behavior has to stop, especially in a state like Oregon. March 16th and 17th is the weekend of the Democratic Party of Oregon reorganization. If you know of any viable candidates who could run for the Democratic Party chair or actually any of the positions. So the ones that are coming up are the chair, the first and second vice chairs, and the secretary. If you know of any good candidates for those, ferret them out, see if they will run, and then in the next couple of weeks, the process for running for those offices will be revealed, and you can nominate yourself and kick off that process. People that there's several people that I've approached right now, you know, just because the party has such a awful reputation. It's not like what people want to do in their spare time or in their retirement. March 21st is the last day to file for candidates. So any candidates that you find, you need to think through the process for when you want to file, because there's a strategy around that. But make sure that they get filed by March 21st. I usually advise candidates to file early and stake out your territory, but you have to suss out the politics in your area to find out what you really want to do. And then there's a lot of interesting rules around it. So we have districts where multiple candidates can pick which of the positions they can run for. So if there's like 4 positions in your community college that don't have residency requirements, you can pick and choose which one, you can really pick and choose who you're going to run against to maximize your chances of winning. The one that trips up some candidates is that the filing date for the voters pamphlet statement is close on the heels of the last filing date. So this year, the last date to file your voters pamphlet statement is March 25th. You've got 4 days if you file on the 21st to get your professional photograph taken and your thoughts organized so you have a coherent message and a reason why people want to vote for you. It's hard to distill your thoughts into the limited amount of space. And so I would encourage you to work on that from the moment you decide to run. April 30th is the voter registration deadline for voting in the primary or in the local election in 2019. May 1st is the date the ballots will be mailed, and the election is May 21st.
Larry, I don't know if Charles got his question answered about what is the best way to find out what positions are coming up. Where can people go to find that information online? Or
if you have an elections office that has a website, and it's not clear that all counties do, and they posted it, it should be posted there. Sometimes they don't do that until the new year, and so it might not be there yet. The best place to get a clue of what is on the ballot is to go get the election results for your county from 4 years ago. Most positions are for 4 years, and so the positions that were on the ballot 4 years ago should be coming up in this next cycle. There's some minor differences in that if someone was in a position and they resigned and there was an appointment, that election might also be coming up. And so there might be more positions than were 4 years ago. Or 4 years ago, there might be more positions elected than will show up this next time because that's no one resigned. To get a definitive list, I try to go back 8 years. And so between the results from the election 4 years ago and the election 8 years ago, you can pretty much figure out what's coming up. And then the next step then would be go to your county elections office and find out the requirements for running, and if there's districts, what the district maps are. Some of these are kept in binders. That's not stuff that you can get online. And so you really have to go down and have a conversation with the county elections clerk. They're always really friendly and helpful, so don't be intimidated at all by having those conversations with them. I'm sure they would be delighted to help you. Any other questions, Betsy?
No, I don't see any others.
If you want to get involved with the group that I'm leading, it's called Advancement of Democracy. Let's show that slide. It's at advancementofdemocracy.org, and there's a join button. Just sign up there, let us know what you want to do, and we'll be kicking off the meetings for that in January. So we would love to have broad representation across the state so we can get ready for 2020.
And Larry, just to clarify what Advancement of Democracy will be doing, you and I were talking earlier in the green room. We're going to be working on finding viable candidates for different roles and then using our resources and knowledge to help them get elected, correct?
Yes. So
anybody who's interested in running for an office who'd like some help, that might be a place to go. Just saying.
And our track record here in Placer County is that we have won 11 of the last 12 county commissioner seats starting in 2010, which is an extraordinary record. And I'm sorry we lost one this last time, but it's not the end of the world. Merch. Let's show them the merch, John, because you've created some amazing stuff.
Oh, not me. This is all Ashley Terry, but yeah, the SCC delegate one is great, huh?
Yeah, so you can buy. So if you look in the bylaws of the Democratic Party of Oregon, you can see in Article 2 that the governing body of the State Central Committee is the SCC delegates. It's not the chair. The chair is channeling the will of the assembly to do what a majority wants. And so this is where we get this attitude in our leadership that they can go off and do anything that they want, when in fact they really should be doing the will of the majority. So what actually is designed is a set of products, and what we show here are my two favorites, the T-shirt and the hoodie, that state the language from the Democratic Party of Oregon bylaws on where the governing authority is. So if you'd like to buy those, you can shop at advancementofdemocracy.org. There's a link to the page, and you can find any of this stuff and have it printed up and mailed to you. So that's it for our show today. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the new year.
Awesome. Well done. Thank you, Larry. That was great. I normally go out with a song. That's what we do here. But I was really impressed with Greta Thunberg. I've heard her name pronounced so many different ways by Americans. It's very sad. and I'm probably not getting it right either. She has a message for grown-ups, and it's basically that the youth are done with our shit, right? They're not going to wait, and I love her words. She's talking about climate change here, but she's kind of meaning it for all of democracy. We've been trying to get change happening. It needs to happen a lot faster. And so we need to light a fire under our politicians' ass and make them move, or just become those politicians. I hope democracy wins out over violence, but Greta's got a point. We're going to do what it takes, one way or the other. She's much better at saying this than I am. Listen to Greta. Be inspired, and do what you can do.
Before I start, I just want to thank you, Antonio Guterres, for speaking so clearly about the climate crisis. It brings a lot of hope to people. For 25 years, countless of people have stood in front of the United Nations climate conferences, asking our nation's leaders to stop the emissions. But clearly, this has not worked, since the emissions just continue to rise. So I will not ask them anything. Instead, I will ask the people around the world to realize that our political leaders have failed us, because we are facing an existential threat, and there is no time to continue down this road of madness. Rich countries like Sweden need to start reducing emissions by at least 15% every year to stay below a 2-degree warming target. You would think the media and every one of our leaders would be talking about nothing else, but they never even mention it. Nor does hardly anyone ever mention that we are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction, with up to 200 species going extinct every single day. Furthermore, does no one ever speak about the aspect of equity, clearly stated in the Paris Agreement, which is absolutely necessary to make it work on a global scale. That means that rich countries, like mine, need to get down to 0 emissions within 6 to 12 years with today's emission speed. Because how can we expect countries like India, Colombia or Nigeria to care about the climate crisis if we, who already have everything, don't care even a second about our actual commitments to the Paris Agreement? So when school started in August this year, I sat myself down on the ground outside the Swedish Parliament. I school striked for the climate. Some people say that I should be in school instead. Some people say that I should study to become a climate scientist so that I can solve the climate crisis. But the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have all the facts and solutions. And why should I be studying for a future that soon may be no more, when no one is doing anything to save that future? And what is the point of learning facts when the most important facts clearly means nothing to our society? Today we use 100 million barrels of oil every single day. There are no politics to change that. There are no rules to keep that oil in the ground. So we can no longer save the world by playing by the rules, because the rules have to be changed. So we have not come here to beg the world leaders to care for our future. They have ignored us in the past and they will ignore us again. We have come here to let them know that change is coming, whether they like it or not. The people will rise to the challenge. And since our leaders are behaving like children, we will have to take the responsibility they should have taken long ago. Thank you.